Burlesque Stripped Down, episode number 43. Hello, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Velvet Eau Claire, as always, your guide through all of the secrets, sexy secrets, down and dirty secrets. These secrets sometimes are not so sexy, right? Because it's the reality of us, the ladies and gents behind the tassels. I am really excited to be back with you today. It is the very last episode of August. I don't know why that matters, but it's kind of cool, right? It's August 2016 as I am recording this, as maybe you are listening to this, although maybe you're listening in the future. But we are making some amazing progress. I've had some really awesome guests over the last few months, and today is no exception. I'm going to keep this intro very brief because my guest and I we actually just got off of Skype with her, and we had just an amazing conversation that I am just brimming with pleasure to be sharing with you. Honestly, I feel very invigorated. My guest today is Miss Kaila Prins, and Kaila, she's also known as DeeDee Queen. That's her burlesque name that you may know her as. And I actually first heard. Well, actually, it's funny because a mutual friend actually put us in touch with each other. And then, scheduling didn't quite work out. Might have been my fault. Probably was. Okay, whoops. But then I actually heard Kaila separately on one of my new favorite podcasts, Sex Gets Real, with Dawn Sarah. And I was so impressed with everything that she had to say that I got in touch with her, forgetting the fact that I had already been in touch with her. Oh, goodness, Velvet. Just one of those moments, a little brain fart there. So anyway, I knew how important it was for me to get her on and to share some of her insights with you. You'll hear a little bit about her background and everything, but she has just a really interesting approach, really important approach, I think, to a lot of, not just burlesque, but a lot of, body image issues and things like that. So we get real deep, real fast, and then we end on some lighter notes, as per usual. So without further ado, I'm really just going to go ahead and just let the interview speak for itself. So here it is, my interview with the fabulous Kaila Prins. Are you ready for this? This is going to be pretty amazing. I have Miss Kaila Prins today. How are you doing, Kaila?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much.
Oh, man, I'm so excited to have you on. Now, of course, Kaila, you are also known by some as Miss DeeDee Queen.
Indeed.
Indeed. Why don't you just go ahead? I'd love to just jump right in. And, I know we have a little bit about you, on your website. I love that you have everything that you need to know about me and you have some bullet points. So let me just read these through real quick so we get an idea. And then I'd love you to fill in any gaps, okay? So number 1, you are a drag queen trapped in a cis woman's body. 2, a ditcher of diet culture. You've recovered from EDONS?
Yes. Eating disorder not otherwise specified, which is now known as OSFED, but essentially not quite anorexia, but anorexia.
Gotcha. Okay. I was unfamiliar, so thank you for clearing up that acronym. Okay. Yes. A voice actor who is no longer afraid to use your voice. A burlesque and pole performer who found body acceptance and body positivity through dance. And a certified health and wellness coach who teaches and podcasts about health at every size and discovery, not recovery.
Yes.
All right. So that's an awesome, I love that that's, very concise and covers all the bases. But why don't you just go ahead and fill in the gaps for what we can't just read on a website?
Oh, goodness.
I know everything.
There's a lot of gaps.
No pressure, right?
So I guess the most relevant bit to what we're going to discuss today is, it was pretty recently my 1-year burlesque birthday, and it's almost my 2-year pole dance birthday.
Yay! Happy birthday!
Thank you. I was previously a theater kid, and then after that, a theater teacher, and then after that, I went to school for theater until my anorexia sort of decided for me that was not going to be what I did for a living. And it took me about 5 years to sort of make my way back to the stage, only this time I don't have tech week.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was an exercise addict, and I kind of spiraled out of control during my second relapse in about, 2009, and I left my theater career and moved back in with my mom, and then we moved across the country, and I got a job as a copywriter, and, it took me a really long time to sort of figure out who I was, what I wanted to do with myself, where I wanted to go, and when I had reached this sticking point in my recovery that I call recovered enough, it's the point where you're not anorexic anymore. You're not fixated on being skinny anymore. It's all about like strong is the new skinny, and like you should be a personal trainer and a nutritionist and teach people how to nourish themselves and talk about food all the time. And I realized after about 3 years of building this personal brand that was all about like learning how to unlock my genetics by not eating gluten or something, I realized that it was so fake. You know, I was really committed to it. It was my identity. It was something I believed in, and I never lied to my audience about like who I was and what I wanted. But I realized that I wanted something that my eating disorder wanted still, even though I wasn't disordered necessarily anymore, at least no longer mentally ill, right? Or at least actively in my mental illness. And so what I realized was that when being recovered enough is something that's very accepted by our society. It's very like, well, of course you should quit your job and be a personal trainer. Like, isn't that what every important thin person does? Right?
Right.
Of course you should be focusing on nourishing yourself and forcing your entire family to listen to you at every single meal, explaining why they should also be not eating dairy. Right? I mean, you know, or sharing your latest updates on Facebook about your, you know, journey to healing your acne. And it got to this point where like I just realized I was tired. I'd heard it all before. I had said it all before. And I didn't feel better about my body, about myself. I felt a little better, but I didn't feel better. I didn't feel like I had an identity outside of still struggling to get or stay lean. And so, or strong, you know, whatever you want to call it. And so I embarked on what I later termed discovery instead of recovery, because I feel like a lot of people, even if you don't have an eating disorder, I think this is really relevant to anyone who's been stuck on the diet binge cycle, or anybody who has serious body image issues, which is like everyone these days.
Pretty much, yeah.
Anyone who's ever seen a commercial for some sort of weight loss tool and thought, I should do that. Like, we get stuck in recovering our sense of self and going back and back and back and back, redoing the same process, right? And what I realized is like the reason why I was recovering and then relapsing over and over again was because I didn't actually have a sense of identity outside of my body. So I started discovering what else I liked. And that meant going out and making mistakes and doing things I didn't like. But it also meant going out and trying new things. So one of the things I tried was speed dating. And then once I started to get over my social anxiety, then I like tried Tinder. And
oh, God.
I know, right? Like of all the things.
Yeah.
But what was amazing about Tinder is that I met this guy who had a lot of the same interests as I did in certain kinds of stand-up comedy and like this, we listened to the same podcasts, and they were comedy podcasts because I had just started listening to those as well instead of I had deleted all of my health and fitness and nutrition ones. So I was like filling the gaps with comedy and just going, oh my God, this is amazing. So I started going out with this guy, and one night he took me to a burlesque show because one of his best friends is a burlesque performer in San Francisco. And I sat down at the Hubba Hubba Review.
Oh, yes. I love the Hubba Hubba Review.
It's an incredible show. Like, it's just, hands down, is a production, you know? And
absolutely.
That was my first burlesque show ever. And before I even left that night, I was on my phone Googling burlesque lessons because I realized every single person who presented themselves on stage did so without shame and with complete abandon. And did so with poise and grace and humor and a sense of self. And it was amazing because it was the first time that I had seen bodies that didn't have to be a certain way doing something joyous without shame. And so I immediately was like looking up burlesque lessons. But the problem is, at the time, all the burlesque lessons were in the city or Santa Cruz or somewhere that was at least an hour from where I lived.
Yes.
The only lessons that I could find were like this, it was like a burlesque fitness class at Sedusa Studios, which is a pole dance studio in Campbell, California. And so I ended up becoming a pole dancer instead. And so I did that for about 6 months or so before I had met another guy who is my boyfriend now. And he introduced me to this group of friends of his who are all burlesque dancers. And
that's amazing.
I was just like, first of all, dude, you win points with me because you're friends with burlesque dancers. And second of all, thank you for introducing me to these incredible human beings who then kind of lassoed me and got me to a show in San Francisco. And actually, so my very first burlesque performance, it's ridiculous. So I was kittening a show. It was the second ever Bad Influence burlesque show. So my friend Tease Blossom and Maisie Mayhem, they have started a burlesque show in the South Bay where I live, which is like amazing. So I was kittening a show and one of the other girls had broken her foot and Maisie was backstage saying, we need a replacement for the Curvy Girl lingerie fashion show. They asked us to do a couple of burlesque numbers and the girl who was going to perform broke her foot. And I was like, when is it? 2 weeks. I'll do it. I didn't have a costume, didn't have choreography, didn't have a song. I pulled it together. I was like ready to go. I had the victory rolls and the garters and the dress and everything. And I show up and I've got the dance choreographed and I'm ready to go. And just as I am taking off my first glove, there's a short and all of the music system just went down. And oh my God. I'm standing there on stage. I'm like, okay, I can vamp for a couple seconds. Because I just thought something, like maybe they unplugged something or they'll just get it back up. Oh no. Right. No. The whole system went down. And so eventually after like 2.5 minutes of just pure vamping, and just, kind of like, well, I'm waiting here to take my clothes off for you.
Oh my God.
Then one of the girls who's running the show came up to me and was like, you're just going to have to go. And I'm like, oh. What? So I performed my whole dance without music, and the audience kind of like clapped along and like gave me a beat
bless their hearts.
And cheered, and it was amazing. I mean, first of all, if you don't know Crystal Bugon, she runs Curvy Girl Lingerie in San Jose, California. You should know her, but the community that she has cultivated of body positive, size accepting human beings is just so incredible, and they were so supportive. So that was my first burlesque show.
Wow. Well, nothing like getting thrown right into it, right? That's amazing.
It's been uphill from there, though, so.
That's good. Yeah, well, it's almost good to kind of start, at least now you can make it through anything. If you made it through that, you can do anything, right?
Exactly.
Well, that's amazing. I really love, I love where your journey has taken you and how you kind of put that, I love what you're saying about discovery versus recovery, and that journey. There's so much about that I really want to dig into, and we're going to try to do that in our short amount of time.
Please.
So you've kind of continued from there. Are you still a pole dancer? Is that something that you kind of pursue as well, or have you kind of switched foci entirely?
Well, so, I actually got my first gold medal in pole dance in March at...
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. But it was at kind of a big expense. So one of the things that happens in, I guess, recovery is sometimes you still have learning experiences. Mm-hmm. And while I am no longer an exercise addict, in that I literally am no longer addicted to exercise, I can take days off without having panic attacks or major mood swings or having to go through withdrawal, essentially. I'm a very active person. But I sometimes don't recognize pain signals as pain signals until after it's a little bit too late. So when I started training for this competition, I was cross-training with yoga. And I hurt my wrists doing a vinyasa flow. There's a lot of hand balancing, down dog, up dog, that sort of thing. And it got to the point where by the time I was competing, I couldn't put my hands flat on the floor at all without extreme pain. Oof. And actually, that competition, I competed with what I now know is tendinosis in the left hand, a torn tendon in the right hand, and I had also sprained my left foot. Plus, I have nerve damage in the right foot from an exercise injury several years ago. So,
oh no, I'm cringing just thinking about that.
Yeah, so I have not done any pole dance since April 2nd, and it's been really tough, emotionally, to be away from the thing that was such a healing and nurturing experience for me. So fortunately, there's a lot of burlesque that I can do that doesn't involve much of, no hand balancing, obviously. And so I have just been focusing on that. And it has actually it's opened up a lot of time for me. So I'm
Yeah.
actually right now working with a friend of mine. Her name is Scarlett Kant. She is helping me create like this. I guess it's interesting because we both kind of had this idea separately and then together. But we're basically trying to create a theatrical burlesque like theater
I
company.
love it.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
how to better phrase that, but yeah. So it's we're calling it Curtains Cabaret, and so I've had a lot of extra time now that I'm not in pole dance lessons,
True.
to work on actually like writing press releases and figuring out strategy. And so we have our first show in October, which is pretty exciting.
Ooh, very good. That's awesome. That seems to be something that is kind of coming up a little bit more often. I mean, not entirely often, but I've actually talked with a couple of people. For those who listen to the show, there's been a couple of people who have mentioned kind of starting this idea of more theatrical type burlesque, and kind of blending the real like through storylines and plots and things with burlesque. And I think that's an area that I predict it's going to explode in the next 10 years or so.
Yeah.
I really think this is something that has not been tapped into yet.
Yeah, and I'm so excited about it because, like Scarlett's an incredible storyteller and she's so committed and has a lot of experience in burlesque. And my background, as I mentioned, is in theater and in dramaturgy. So this is giving me the opportunity to really like work on the storyline, and to help build narratives that maybe will also help us expand past our regular audiences, if you will. Because I love the burlesque audiences out here, but it tends to also just be a lot of other burlesque performers. And I would love,
It's true.
I would love to be able to bring people who might be interested in the theatrical part of it, who maybe wouldn't necessarily be as excited about like an 11 p.m. show with an MC and a variety act, but could come and like do, obviously it's still not family friendly because, apparently nipples are dangerous, but
boobies. Yeah.
I mean, they'll corrupt our youth, but
Sure, of course, duh.
yeah, but like
body shaming.
yeah, no big deal, right?
right, nothing, yeah.
But so we're trying something different, and Scarlett and another one of the amazing dancers down here, Kiki Savage, they had produced a theatrical show that like completely sold out. And so we see that it's possible down here and that there is an audience for it. And so now we're just going to try to do that on a more regular basis. So I'm using this opportunity that I have with all this extra time for recovery, literal physical recovery, to work on something that can give me a chance to grow.
That's beautiful. That's a really good outlook to have. I'm sure there are times when it's hard, but it's nice when we can remember that we have different seasons of lives, right? And that we have different like phases where we might be able to do, something physical like pole dance, but then there are times when we can't, and to, then rechannel our energies, I guess, and to focus on other things without, falling into any, depression or things like that because you can't do it. Focus on what you can do and not what you can't do, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Right? And not to, sound super Pollyanna and like this has been easy, because it's not easy.
Sure, of course, of course. Yeah.
Like, yeah. This has been maybe one of the most difficult times of my life, especially because I've lived with chronic pain now for 5 years, since I first injured my leg because of my exercise addiction. And so it's triggered a lot of the old sort of unresolved stuff that's come up. And I'm just trying to redirect now and channel that energy into something that can be good and can create opportunities for other people as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I think that's important for us to remember. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be easy, but we can kind of, like you said, redirect that energy, focus on what we can do at this given time, even if it's not the ideal situation, even if it's not what we would choose to be doing if life were perfect. But if life were perfect, then we would never learn anything.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, hey, if life were quote unquote perfect, I wouldn't be doing burlesque yet, so.
Right. And that's true. It's true, right? We wouldn't find who we are.
Yeah.
Okay. So you mentioned this upcoming show that you are putting together. Is that, because I always ask, one of my first questions is what you have going on right now that you are the most excited about. Would that take the cake, or do you have anything else kind of burning as well?
Well, that's the big one. That's the like, holy cats, I can't believe we just agreed to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited because it gives me the opportunity to get back to theater. I'm
Definitely.
very fortunate in that I've been performing a lot in the last several months. I was invited to the California Burlesque to compete for in the comedy category. And
Ooh, congratulations.
thank you. And I'm also kind of excited because I'm doing my first burlesque festival. I'm going to be at the Hawaii Burlesque Festival on September 22nd doing my Aphrodite number. So
Yay!
I've never been to Hawaii, and I don't have like any more time off at work, but I'm going anyway. So
You'll make it work somehow. They probably won't fire you. It'll be fun.
No big deal. Honestly, I work because I have to pay for my rhinestones. That's pretty much.
Amen, sister. Amen. And this podcasting thing ain't cheap either.
Oh my God, seriously. That's one of the reasons. So I have a podcast as well, and I had to take a hiatus because it's an investment of a lot of things.
It really is, yeah.
Financial and emotional.
Maybe someday I'll do a whole, we'll discuss all of that. Because I think, I didn't realize it when I got into it, but it definitely is, like you said, an investment.
Yes.
In a lot of different ways.
Yes.
So, well, very cool. From, festivals and all sorts of performing. That sounds amazing. Now, one thing you mentioned earlier were, kind of taking things as learning experiences. And I really like the way you put that. Another way that I actually discovered this on another podcast a couple months ago is this acronym called AFOG. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay. So it stands for Another Fucking Opportunity for Growth.
Beautiful.
Right. And I just love it. I just think it's a perfect way to think about, I just try to kind of keep that in the back of my mind so that when I have these difficult situations, something that is not ideal, whether it's my reaction, for example, when I interact with my darling mother, who is a wonderful human being, but for some reason she brings out the crazy in me sometimes, and I don't respond the right way. So instead of getting mad at myself, instead of beating myself up about it, which I do to an extent, because we're not all perfect, but I also try to keep this AFOG acronym in my mind that it's, we're not always going to be perfect, and I can take these situations as another fucking opportunity for growth.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what has been for you a recent AFOG moment? Has there been anything, whether it's something that you did or something that happened to you that could have been, could have brought you down, could have been something, or maybe it did a little bit, but you're also able to kind of reframe it as an AFOG?
Well, I would say this injury is definitely the big one.
Yeah.
It really is. And it's something I'm still figuring out how to grow from. I think I've had, a lot of really great, positive growth opportunities, right? I just started teaching and, I've had the opportunity to sort of mentor other people in the burlesque scene. Even being as new as I am. But I think the really big one has just been learning how to deal with my own ability to injure myself, and to push too hard, and to care too much, maybe, and to figure out where is that line? And I still haven't figured it out. So I am in the midst of my AFOG, and sometimes I feel like I might need some fog lights because I can't see.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's this is leading you somewhere. This is a good thing, I guess, in the end, but it's hard to have that perspective.
Yeah.
From the inside.
Yeah, it really is. And, I'm very lucky that, I have a really good support system to get me through
I was just going to ask you about that. Yeah. Tell me about what you have that kind of sets you up for success in that respect.
Well, as I mentioned, my boyfriend is fantastic, and he has been so supportive of everything, both, positive and negative in the middle of this AFOG. Yeah. He's always there cheering me on at the shows. And he's excited about all of my numbers, and he's the one who set me up with all of this, basically. But at the same time, he's also, we just moved in together, and so we're both kind of learning how to navigate that. And then I have this giant period of depression and sadness and fear and a little bit of shame over the fact that I hurt myself with doing yoga, and he's just been so great in trying to help me reframe or just listen when I don't want to be reframed. I just started doing therapy. I'm still figuring out if I like it. I've never had a good experience with therapy, but I started using something called Talkspace, so I can text message a random therapist who was set up with me based on what my needs were and what her specialty was. So
I've heard of that. I thought it was an interesting idea.
It is.
I wasn't sure. Yeah.
I actually really like it because rather than like waiting a week and like making a list and thinking about it all week, like this is the thing I'm angry about, or I'm feeling hurt about, or I don't feel heard, or whatever, I can just text her while I'm at work and be like, this thing just happened and I don't know how to, I can't cope with it. What do I do? And,
interesting.
you know, sometimes she's not able to answer right away, but she's often in the room when I need her to be, or she'll get back to me fairly shortly. And so it's, and, you know, I pay a little bit of extra money each month so that I can do at least one video call with her. But so that's been okay. I'm still kind of navigating it, but I like this model better than the like paying somebody for 1 hour, you know, once every week or so.
I think it's really important that we all, you know, are aware of not just being aware of the situation we're in, but being kind of aware of how it, I guess we can't really know how it's going to impact and how it's going to help us, but just to be aware. I don't really know what I'm saying.
No, I think I know where you're going with it. And you know, I mean, the thing is when you're in the middle of I guess that fog, right, as it were, metaphorical and acronymical. I don't know.
Yeah, that works. New word.
It's late in the evening, so
right? Indeed, yeah. I think my brain anyway is a little foggy, actually.
Exactly, right. But when you're in the middle of it, it's the thing about being human. And this is what I've realized, especially because, you know, I work as a coach working with women who've gone through what I've gone through. And one of the things that I've noticed is that, you know, it's really scary being a human. And we don't have as much control as we think we do. And what's interesting is that not all growth opportunities lead to, they don't always lead to like a package that gets tied up neatly with a bow at the end. And sometimes they go on for way longer than you're like, I already grew. I'm done growing. No more growing. I figured it out. Right. I got the lesson, right?
Right.
For example, chronic pain for me and injury, this is like, we're like almost 6 years in. And this is just one more thing on top of like years of being misdiagnosed and mishandled by doctors and, you know, injured by doctors as well. And now I have to deal with this question of, is this new doctor going to injure me after the last 5 emotionally injured me? You know, and the first one physically injured me. So, you know, it's like, there's no way to know if this is going to turn out well. And it really, really fucking sucks to have to like accept that, because I don't want to accept that, because I'm a playwright. I'm a dramaturg. When I tell a story, I want the story to have an ending, and the ending, whether it's good or bad, to make sense. And being a human isn't like that. The reason that we like stories is because it gives us the catharsis that sometimes life never gives us. Or when it does give it to us, it's too late, or we're not ready to accept what that catharsis is, or we don't know how to interpret it until we have another few years of, you know, reframing and learning and growing. And so, you know, being able to just say, I'm in this. It sucks. And I'm in the process of feeling the suck right now. And dealing with the suck and not dealing with it very well and making a lot of mistakes because of it, you know? But I'm trying really hard to start reframing things, because I've been doing a lot of research on, you know, things like, so I actually just yesterday, I found the phrase learned helplessness. It was based on a study that was done by, I guess, Dr. Seligman. He's like one of the fathers of positive psychology. And I guess in the 70s, they had done this study, and I'm sorry for this random tangent, but it's been on my mind.
Please. Continue, yeah.
And it's, so for the animal rights activists out there, this is going to be upsetting, and I apologize. So basically they had done this study in the 70s where they hooked these dogs up in a bunch of harnesses, and they gave them a little panel above their heads. And if they pressed the panel, half the dogs were able to control their situation, and the other half pressing the panel did nothing. The situation was their hind legs were shocked with electricity for 30 seconds. And so the control group that was able to literally control their situation, they could turn the shocks off. Like, ow, that hurts. I'm going to hit the panel. And then they learned how to control the situation. half that continued to get shock after shock after shock and couldn't stop it, they just, they just got shocked for an entire day. Now, the next day, they put them into these rooms where the floor was electrified, and they would, electrify it and then stop it, and then electrify it and stop it. And the dogs were able to jump over a small barrier to get to a room where there was no electric shock. And the dogs that had had the ability to control their situation jumped over the barrier with no problem. The dogs that had been shocked and shocked and shocked the day before didn't move and just let the shocks happen. And what I've realized in my own life, because I've done many studies since then, I went down a rabbit hole of research, but essentially, like, they've done study after study after study, and that was actually how they created cognitive behavioral therapy and positive psychology. In my own life, I have learned helplessness many times because I've been shocked and shocked and shocked and shocked and shocked and felt that there was no control. Or had control taken away from me, often because of the mental illness portion of things. And so now when I am presented with some very large shocks, the way that I react is to shut down and to feel helpless and hopeless and to let that take me over. And I've realized that that's not, obviously it's not helping, but I don't know what else to do. And so it's a matter of like getting past this period of learned helplessness, or unlearning it, if you will, to try to get through. So I don't know. It's super random tangent, but it's just been on my mind since I started researching it.
Whoa.
Right.
I'm pretty sure my mind was just blown.
Right?
I don't really know. No, for real. Like, wow.
Yeah.
That's an amazing concept. I mean, I know what I'm going to be doing tonight is researching these studies that I hadn't thought about in those terms. Now my brain is going to all these different areas of my life and my family and wow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This idea of when you're so used to, it's almost kind of maybe ties in with like the idea of like the victim mentality a little bit. And
yes, totally.
This idea of I'm so used to things happening to me and there's nothing I can do about it, that even when an opportunity arises where there is something I can do about it, I don't see that.
Yes. And so one of the connections that I actually just made, again, this is like super fresh in my mind, so it's on my mind. But like, there are so many people in the burlesque community who have gone through trauma of some kind, who have had really rough backgrounds, who have turned to performing to tell their stories or to gain a sense of agency that they didn't have at any other point in their lives, or to work through some of the trauma on stage. And, I've noticed, even when I was telling you, I like my burlesque persona sometimes better than I like my real self, because I have a sense of control. She's a fiction and I've made her, and when I am in that persona, like she has an end point where I take her off. And during the period when I'm wearing her, I have the ability to make choices, right? I can go on stage. I can do my choreography. I have this sense of agency that I don't necessarily feel, as a muggle, as it were, right? Because in my muggle life, I still have to get up and go to work. In my muggle life, I still have to go to like a family dinner that I'm not really interested in going to because I know what the conversation's going to be like, right? In my muggle life, I still am not allowed to post that much about burlesque on my personal Facebook page because there are certain people in my family who don't want to know that this is what I do, even though they know it. In my muggle life, I'm injured. DeeDee isn't,
Right. Yeah.
And so I can take my wrist braces off for the 5 minutes that I'm peeling my gloves off, and then I put them back on. Mm-hmm. And I literally just made this connection while we were talking, like, is there maybe something to the healing of putting on a character, of discovering this sense of control? And how do we bring that into our like muggle lives,
Yeah. I think there's got to be something, we're going to have to develop this idea further because, we've talked a lot about it on this podcast with various people I've interviewed, various guests, that like this intersection between, my real personality, my persona, my characters, like all of this kind of, these trichotomies, I guess, or dichotomies, whatever. And this idea of healing. A lot of people feel that they are, their persona has one aspect of themselves amplified, right? That's been a common theme from people that I've talked to.
Yeah.
And so it's that idea of being able to maybe move past that learned helplessness or that victim mentality, or, not that there's anything wrong with the victim mentality. I mean, sometimes people have gone through trauma and they need to work through that, right?
Yeah.
And so this idea of taking on this character that's bigger than themselves, bigger than they feel anyway, to kind of move through that. I like this. I feel like this is the kind of, this is some grains, some seeds of goodness. And I'm interested to see, what we can develop out of this.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, one of the big things for me, so I've been doing body image coaching for a couple of years now, and I find that I've gotten tired of it in many ways, like exhausted, physically drained by it, because I feel like people really want to hold on to the victim persona that they have created. And so the direction that I've started going is I've started teaching burlesque instead. And I think, maybe subconsciously I kind of already knew that this was sort of the thing to do. And maybe I can take some of the stuff that I've started researching on learned helplessness and incorporate that into my teaching. But I really believe that it's not so much about like you have to do the work. You have to do recovery. Like there isn't a period where you get to just skip the hard stuff and the trauma and the catharsis and all that, right? I know.
I just want to go to the good part.
No. You gotta get through and get out of the woods. Like work.
Damn it.
Right? Like find a therapist, find somebody who can help you work through it, because no one should have to do this on their own. But then there comes a point, and I don't know how you define it. And it's one of the things that frustrates me the most in watching my audience struggle. It's like there's a point where the recovery work stops serving you, where you've journaled all your pain and now you're just rolling around in the journals of pain instead of burning it and moving on, right? And but you needed to do that journaling at the beginning, right? To get it out of you and out into the world so that it's no longer inside of your body and held in a secret and something that is going to continue to eat you up from the inside. But there's a point where it just stops being useful and it starts being a way to keep yourself stuck. And I don't know what that point is, because I think it's different for every single person. But I knew the day that I was walking my dog through the neighborhood listening to yet another podcast about low carb. And I just, I stopped and I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. I literally, if I have to listen to one more podcast about how to keep my body lean, I'm going to spontaneously combust. And a lot of people just spontaneously combust, and they do that, but slowly. I guess it's not so spontaneous. It's like prolonged combustion, and they just do that for years and years and years because it's a learned behavior, because it can't be any other way, right?
Yes.
It's the only way
absolutely.
I know. And so what I would like to do with my burlesque teaching and with my coaching business going forward, and something that I've really been working on, is really just focusing on the what next after you've said, this is enough. I've done the heat, the wound itself has been opened and I've gotten the infection out. Sorry for the gross imagery. But now we got to let this thing heal. And the only way to do that is to cover it up and move the hell on.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean invalidating your past. For example,
that's so important. Yeah.
I am still very, very aware of my eating disorder, right? I am still, I don't pretend like I never had it. I'm aware of the trauma that I've had in my past with some family stuff and with some sexual abuse, from the boyfriend who triggered my most recent relapse with anorexia, right? I'm aware of it, but I'm not wearing it like my pain anymore. I'm still in pain sometimes, but I don't have to embody that anymore, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't define who you are, anymore, especially anymore or ever, really. But it's something that you, to be aware of. Like you said, I like the idea of letting those wounds heal. You don't forget that they're there.
No.
I mean, it's still, you can feel the bandage. You can feel, even the wound sometimes.
And you'll have a scar forever, probably.
Yeah.
But the scar doesn't hurt as much. It sometimes hurts, but it doesn't always hurt. And you can separate yourself from it. So when you tell this story, you're no longer telling it necessarily from that first person place of like, I am. You're telling it from the lens of like, I felt like this, but I don't feel like that anymore. And
right. So it's more past tense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I sorry, I know this is like super heavy and we should be talking about rhinestones, but like this is my life.
No, it's no, and I think that's super important. And this is kind of actually, kind of a nice transition into what I wanted to talk about in our controversy corner today, which is kind of, I've been adding this in to the last few episodes as a chance for us to discuss some of the real heavier issues. We'll get to the light stuff later. I've got some light stuff happening later. That'll be fun.
Right.
But this is more, we've talked about various things. I've talked a little bit about cultural appropriation, about different things like that. And as a preface, of course, to everybody listening, we are not experts. We may say things that we don't mean to say. I mean, we don't always say things perfectly, put it that way. Well, yeah. So
speak from our own experience, and sometimes that precludes the ability to see things until we have it pointed out, in which case it doesn't excuse necessarily the things that get said, but it's a learning opportunity, I think, for a lot of people, right?
I love this girl. She's just like, she says exactly what I'm trying to say, only much more eloquently. It's perfect. I need you just around me all the time. Basically, you're my translator.
Love it.
How does that sound?
I love it.
So yeah, exactly. And what all we ask in this particular corner is that people respond. If you have a response to anything that we say, just please do it with kindness, because we are not intending to offend or to do anything like that. And we would love to continue the discussion. That was something that with Red Hot Annie, we made very clear, because she and I talked about cultural appropriation, two white girls, like talking about that. I mean, come on, like, but we wanted to have the conversation. We wanted to talk about it. And I'm sure we fucked some things up, and I want to get those emails, you know what I mean? But nicely, just please do it nicely, because we're not trying to piss anybody off.
Right,
so.
Right.
Anyway, so today I thought, it'd be interesting, obviously your area of expertise is this, this idea of discovery and recovery and eating disorders and body image and things like that. So I want to talk a little bit about body image in burlesque, because of course burlesque is something that is, usually very body positive, but there's still kind of an underlying, a lot of people still, I mean, maybe I'm saying this from a selfish perspective, because for me, for example, I'm very confident. I'm actually, at the moment, I am heavier than I've ever been, but I'm also the most confident that I've ever been, thanks mostly to burlesque. But at the same time, I still find myself wanting to lose weight, because there's that societal, I don't know if I guess it's societal. I like it better. I like it better when I have a little less of a belly, and I think a lot of us feel this way. So what can you kind of go into as far as that kind of body image type thing goes? Maybe this will just be my personal counseling session for the next 10 minutes. I don't know.
Totally
but I think
down.
a lot of people have this, where it's like, yes, we're body positive. Yeah. But we also, I like the way it looks when I'm a little bit skinnier,
Yeah. So, man, this is the topic, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
Poof. So,
you have about 10 minutes to go through to get everything out there.
So I will preface this by saying that I am straight-sized. I say this because while I no longer am a bodybuilder, I was down at like 12% body fat at one point in my life when I was, that was when I was actually diagnosed with anorexia, and I was eating 6 meals a day and, going to the gym and trying to get strong, not skinny or whatever. But so I've been around communities that would call me fat, right? But I am not fat. I don't identify as fat, and I don't want to appropriate space from anybody who is and try to make this seem like, like I'm so body positive because, I'm not oppressed, right? So I like to put this out there because, there's a couple of different things going on here, right? There's the issue of societal oppression of people who are fat. So there is a fear, whether it's present or like whether you're aware of that fear or not. There's a fear of gaining weight and having the actual societal oppression that happens when you are above a certain size, right? And everybody's got a different definition of what fat is, but, when you get down to it, when you walk on an airplane and don't have to think, are people going to be mad at me for existing? Then you are not fat, right? So we can just agree with that.
Okay. There's our that's it. Okay. Right? All right. Cool.
So there is a serious fear because we have been brought up in a society that especially, and I'm not sure how old you are, and, I don't know if you want to talk about it, but,
I just had the big 3-0.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm turning 30 this year as well. So
yay. All right, cool.
So,
it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. I'm actually quite enjoying it. So
I've heard it. Life gets better after 30. So
yeah, that's what they say. Thank goodness.
So we were raised at the same time, right? Which means that we were raised in a time when heroin chic was the body type ideal. And at the same time, I went to McDonald's every Tuesday night, and I ate fruit roll-ups after school, and then I had pizza on the nights when I wasn't at McDonald's, and then I was encouraged not to play sports because I was a smart kid who liked to read books, right?
Right.
That was like...
Yeah, because I had to choose between theater or sports, because you could only do one after-school activity. So what was I going to pick? Theater.
Exactly, right? So, okay. So we grew up in a society where we're increasingly being shown quote-unquote ideal images. And as we got older and got, the internet, right, we were exposed even more often than previous generations. But we also grew up with news reports about the obesity epidemic. We also grew up with gym culture, which, if you can believe it, like before the 1970s, people didn't go to the gym. Like, that wasn't a thing. Like, no one woke up at 4 a.m. to go to boot camp. And there weren't women who had no body fat. That's not how this worked. Right? Like, obviously, there are people genetically who have no body fat. And again, there's no skinny shaming meant to happen here.
Of course.
I'm talking specifically about people who are what I call weight suppressed. Not people who are genetically of a certain weight, but who are weight suppressed in that they are actively doing something, whether it is food, fitness, or some combination thereof, to suppress their weight. So to stay under what their body naturally wants to do. So we've had, a perversion of our food sources. We've had a perversion of marketing. And now we're presented with this body positive movement that has come out of this, which is like, you should feel great about yourself. Here's a picture of a really thin woman who starved herself for 2 weeks and didn't drink water for 3 days. Isn't she fit? You could look like her if you buy Nike. It's just like, oh, what? Right. How are we exactly supposed to win? So the fact that you still want to lose weight makes sense, and you shouldn't be punished or shamed for it. However, it's not something that we even should be having to have a conversation about. And I feel really strongly about this because one of the things that has helped me in my recovery is recognizing that there is such a thing as health at every size. For example, I'm the biggest I've ever been. Again, still straight-sized, but much bigger than I've ever been. I've been through an entire closet's worth of clothes multiple times over. And I don't feel any shame or fear anymore, even though I used to be obsessed with trying to control my health, because for the first time in my life, I'm healthy. There's some stuff going on with stress that I got to work on. Right. But before that happened, like, I got my period back, and my cystic acne, for the most part, cleared up. And, I got my libido back. And, all of these things where, if you look at my, you take my blood and look at the numbers, everything is the way it's supposed to be, with the exception of my thyroid, which I fucked up by dieting. But, now that I'm on thyroid meds, even that's okay. So,
yay.
So recognizing that health at every size could be a thing. That, if I exercised less and stopped restricting my body and my food and everything, I could still not only be healthy, but regain some of the health that I had lost through this diet process. And that gave me something of an experience to be able to say, well, if that worked for me and my body is kind of leveling out at where it needs to level out, maybe for other people who have dealt with extreme weight gain, or their thyroid's been messed up for much longer than mine, or whatever the situation is, their body, maybe they're healthy and it's not my job to judge. And so I've been able to stop seeing myself as too big or in need of getting something, getting my body back. Again, recovering, right? I'm discovering what this body can do.
Ooh, I like that.
Thank you. And, the thing is, if I got my body, quote unquote, back, then I might have to get that lifestyle that I had back. And that was a lifestyle of restriction and depression and eventually illness. And so I I don't want that. I want to be able to like sit on the couch with my boyfriend and watch Pokemon tonight instead of obsessing about the fact that I didn't go to the gym after work. You know, like it's just not worth it. And, you know, I look at weight and weight loss as a side effect, right? People are like, oh, well, I want to get healthy again. And it's like, okay, well, you could do that, but you may not lose weight. You know, if you were to go on depression medication, like what would be why would you be on depression medication? What's the reason?
To not be depressed.
Right. But what happens to some people who take depression medication? They get side effects. Side effects may include like leg twitches or brain tremors. I had those, or brain shivers rather. Those were fun. I'm not on depression meds anymore. You know, but like some people get like really scary things. There's one mood stabilizer that gives you a rash that can kill you, you know? So some people get like really scary side effects. Some people get like, oh, you know, they get like a little bit of a side effect when they take a medication. And, you know, some people feel side effects like for like 3 days and then they feel great. Some people feel side effects for like the entire time they're on the medication and feel terrible. Because every body is different and every body is at a different stage in its life and every body has different needs and different chemistry and all of this. When you take a medication or you make some kind of chemical change in your body reacts differently. So why should it be any different with nutrition or fitness, right? Like,
absolutely,
you can eat healthily. Great. Have a good time. That doesn't mean you're going to lose weight, right? You might.
Right.
That also doesn't mean that you're not going to lose weight, right? And so I know that there are many people in the like fat acceptance community who do start to work on their health, which is again separate from weight, and they do lose weight, and then they are shamed out of this community because now they're part of diet culture, even though that's not what the intention was, right?
Right.
And so they're afraid to like try changing health behaviors. And again, it's not like there have been studies done where like 2/3 of overweight people are actually metabolically functional, which is the definition of health. And I think about like 1/4 to 1/3 of quote unquote normal weight people. Again, I hate that term, but 1/4 to 1/3 of normal weight people, and I'm doing heavy air quotes here, are actually metabolically not functional. Again, the definition of health is metabolic function, you know, so we can't judge. But anyway, so when people do change different behaviors, like eating differently or exercising differently, whether or not you lose weight, how long you'll lose weight for, how much weight you'll lose, or, you know, if that's even like on the table, like all of that is a side effect and we have to treat it like that. But our society treats that like a goal. I mean, and even in the burlesque community, like there are certain pockets that are the safe spaces where they are truly body positive, body accepting, you know, body neutral, which is what I personally believe is the goal. But, you know, when you go out into the larger community, like people want to see a Dita waist, you know, people want to see a very specific pinup image and aren't as accepting necessarily, or believe that they themselves have to hold themselves to that standard in order to be accepted, to become a headliner, to, you know, get a cheer on stage, or to be confident enough to even try it in the first place. You know, and I'm sorry, like, this is such a lecture. I apologize, but
no, this is extremely helpful. I'm sure, I mean, to me as well, to other people, you know, and I think the problem that a lot of us have is that, you know, we can be body positive. And I mean, I see, obviously, you know, like Dirty Martini or other, you know, other performers of all shapes and sizes, you know, and I find I find beauty there. I find, inspiration. I find just, it just makes me tingle all over, right? But when it comes to myself, it's not that I'm unaccepting. Like I said, I mean, right now I am more confident than I've ever been. I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like, I'm good. But at the same time, I just prefer when I'm a little bit skinnier. And it kills me because I'm like, man, it's culture. Like, I know it's indoctrinated in me, and I know that, but it's still there. And so I think that's a lot of what we go through. And I'm sure you've had this, you know, with some of your clients, perhaps in your own life as well, is just this balance of like, I want so badly. And it's not just with body as well. I've noticed it in other aspects as well, which we don't have to get into, but, I want so badly to not care and to be this open person who doesn't have societal influences like that on me. And yet they're still there.
I delete as much of it as I can because honestly, like I've become, my boyfriend joked last night, he was calling me a socialist anarchist. I want to take the whole damn system down. Like, I'm over it. I think marketing, okay, so I work in marketing. I work in B2B marketing.
Right.
I have a shelf full of books, and I'm actually working on a book myself about
nice.
how marketing psychology affects us in ways that we, even marketers, don't realize the power that they have. Because the idea of personal brand, and this may resonate with many of the dancers out there, because we are cultivating brands as well, right? In order to become, dancers or headliners or personas, we have to create a personal brand and market ourselves. So even if we do not have our MBAs, which I don't have an MBA, we are learning from the internet, from others who are doing this, how to be marketers, how to influence people.
Absolutely.
And so
absolutely,
what we don't realize, though, is that the influence that we have on other people and the influence we accept from other people, it affects us in such deep, nuanced ways. And because we're not aware of it, because we are accepting these influences or trying to influence people in the same ways we are being influenced, because we accept these influences, it's very hard to unlearn them. And I think that, I think the whole system is flawed, and I'll keep you on the phone for the next 3 hours discussing this. But,
oh my goodness. If people would listen, email me if you would listen to a 3-hour conversation, because I will do it.
I'll do it. I'm working on a book.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to, although I feel like it's going to depress me a little bit when I read it.
It will. This is why I'm struggling right now with all this depression, because it's I see all of these people being hurt without.
It's like when you're unplugged from the Matrix, right?
Yes.
And then you finally fucking realize all this bullshit, and I'm like, man, ignorance is bliss. I just don't want to know. I wish I didn't know, but then you have to know, red pill or blue pill. I mean, I don't know. It's all that Matrix.
And honestly, because I have gotten to this place where it's obviously I'm still influencing society. There are some days when I'm just why? I just want to have my 6-pack back. But then I'm just but I have to reframe. And again, I think this is when you're in it, it's really hard to do it, but you have to do it even if you don't want to, which is does this say anything about me? Does what my body looks like, does it say anything about my worth, about my ability? And, we are very lucky as burlesque dancers because we can go on stage and get that instant validation of no, I am okay. But we shouldn't need it from other people. We should be able to generate that internal catcall and just be able to say, this too is okay. This too shall pass. And, being attractive, conventionally attractive, it's not the most important thing that we can aspire to. So my persona is a drag queen trapped in a woman's body because I have felt since I was 16 years old. This is going to sound so weird, and I apologize if I offend anybody who is trans or non-binary in the audience. I identify as a cis woman, but I don't identify as a cis woman at the same time. It's the only identity that I know how to identify with. It's the only one that resonates with me. But at the same time, and I think this has a lot to do with the anorexia, I have often felt like I'm outside of my body looking in as this non-gendered thing that should be a woman, And
that's interesting. Yeah.
Part of the anorexia was, for me anyway, part of the fitness addiction, the orthorexia, the obsession with muscularity and with leanness and reducing. My greatest joy was the day when I was able to go to Target and buy shorts from the little boys section. I cut all my hair off. I basically made myself as androgynous as possible because I was scared to death of the power of sexuality, if you will, of fully identifying in a cis body that was sexually possible, if that makes any sense. For some reason, my whole life, after my very first kiss when I was 13, he pecked me on the lips, and then I ran to the bathroom and scrubbed my lips while I cried for 20 minutes.
Oh my.
Yeah. And it's stuff that I've had to work through, obviously.
Yeah,
I'm in a very stable sexual relationship now, because that's something that I have worked up to. But for years, whenever I was in a sexual relationship, it would trigger my anorexia, and I would try to erase all of my body fat, get rid of my period, get rid of my breasts, get rid of my hips, and just undo the cis about me, if you will. And I know I am sure, I'm not saying this right, and I apologize again, because I know that identity is such a huge, weird, complicated, heavy thing that affects so many people's lives.
It's true, but you have a right to speak your truth. You know, I mean, this is
Sure.
what you experienced, you know, absolutely. Yeah.
And, you know, and doing pole and then doing burlesque declawed sexuality for me in a lot of ways, or sensuality, or the sense of being in this body that had body fat in ways that made me sexually appealing and also gave me a libido and got me my period back. Like all of these things that made my identity align with what I saw as woman, I guess. And so my character, because I've always just kind of identified as that androgynous creature that put makeup on and played a woman, you know, on stage or on TV or on a date. That's given me the ability to make my identity larger than life, to play with it, to experiment with it, and to allow it to be declawed a little bit. And I think that has actually helped me in a lot of ways more than like therapy did, you know, like to kind of get to a place where like I could look at myself in the mirror and say, this body fat is not like a societally rejected thing, but just where I need to have body fat in order for this body that I actually identify with to do and look the way that I need it to look in order for that identity to work, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like I've gotten to a place where every time I'm like, and like, I'll tell you, like today was one of those bad body image days where like I just feel bloaty and gross and I just want to like pull my skin off, you know, but like at the same time, like I'm able to keep reframing and being like, well, but this is you, so you can't, so stop. You know, like this isn't a bad thing. This is just your body. Move on.
Yeah.
You have other things to do. We have a podcast to go record. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, now I know this is your business. You do this as coaching, so we don't want to have you, give away the farm for free. But do you have any advice, like small tricks? I mean, you mentioned a couple questions you can kind of ask yourself, but like when people find themselves falling into this, these negative self-thoughts or anything like that, like, do you have any little tricks that might be helpful?
Yeah. So it's part of a much larger thing.
Of course.
Obviously, right? I mean, I think before you can even use these tricks to make them work, and this is why we get so frustrated when they don't work, right? Like we're told, like, be body positive, say an affirmation in the mirror. Like the first thing you have to do, and if you're not already there, get on board with intersectional feminism, health at every size, and size acceptance. Like, be cool with all of that. That's going to take some time. Because I know there are a lot of people who are like, but you can't be healthy if you're fat. Well, no, you're wrong. Here's like a list of resources why, right? You know, Linda Bacon, Harriet Brown, go read them, or find me and I'll send you to all of my health at every size. Right? But size acceptance, whether or not you're healthy, like, shut the fuck up. That's somebody else's body. Right. Like, you don't get to judge it and you don't get to judge yours. It's just a body. Getting on board with body neutrality, not needing to be body positive all the time, I think is actually more helpful in a lot of ways than being body positive. Because to me, body positivity feels a little false. Like, I don't want to write an ode to my cellulite. I don't want to fucking care about my cellulite. Like, I just want to declaw it and have it be neutral. I mean, I went through my recovery period where, like, staring in the mirror and being like, I love my thighs. I love my boobs. Even if I did, like, fake it till you make it, right? But now I just want them to be thighs. I just want them to be boobs. And in a lot of ways, doing burlesque, actually just going to like dance classes or having a choreography session has been even better than like a tip or a trick for like body positivity, because guess what my boobs do? They twirl tassels. You know, guess what my thighs do? They're getting closer to a split. And I know that that can also be very ableist. There are people who have disabilities that keep them from being able to do that. But, you know, look, I've got chronic pain. I have nerve damage. There are things that I will never be able to do again. You know, like doing pole dance for me was hugely healing. I may not be able to do that again after the surgery. I don't know. So getting to a place of body neutrality where like you can see it as a tool or like just a part of you and just have it be is really, really good, because if you place too much value on any particular part and then something goes wrong, you're going to lose all of the work that you just did.
Right. Because what's the one thing we know about our bodies? They're going to deteriorate. Like, that's what happens. Even if it's not like a, like a traumatic event or something like that, that's going to happen eventually. So, even our burlesque, our classic burlesque idols
who are still out there on the scene, right, are dealing with aging and dealing with the standards of beauty changing. So, and eventually, you know, like, look, we're both 30. Like, we're not going to be, you know, quote unquote, in our prime. Oh God, please punish me for saying that. You know, ever. We have to recognize that bodies should be neutral and like breathe into that. And when you feel the need to pick it apart, come on, like having a background in accepting yourself and accepting other people and accepting that your health is fine. And if it's not, that health has nothing to do with weight. So just deal with the health thing. You know, I would really encourage people to reach out to me. I have a ton of resources. I'm actually working on a program specifically geared toward women who tend to be on the thinner side of the spectrum, usually coming from a place of orthorexia, anorexia, exercise addiction. You have to be fully recovered to go through the program. But, you know, there are a ton of great coaches who are working with women who are on the other side of the spectrum, who are dealing with binge eating, who are dealing with extreme weight gain or extreme weight loss. And I feel like one of the ways that we will all heal is that we have to get like thin people on board with the idea that all bodies are good, including their own.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. And it's not good only if you keep it thin. So weight suppressed is really the word. It has nothing to do with thinness. But yeah, so I mean, I have a ton of resources and I'm always happy to help. I answer every single email, which is probably why I don't sleep. You know?
That might have something to do with it, yeah.
And I've got 164 episodes of my podcast where I've interviewed people from all over the size spectrum, all over, you know, different identities, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, etc., just to try to understand. And honestly, for myself, like these conversations were super healing because it allowed me to understand that my exceptionalism, right? This need to be thin. I am exceptional. Everyone else can look good, but I have to look a certain way. Was completely misguided and not helping me, you know?
Wow. That's amazing. I feel better. I feel like I had a good coaching session. I appreciate it. No, I think I'm definitely going to, you know, start listening to all of your episodes of all of your podcasting-ness. And I think it'd be great to have some of those resources. So for anybody who's listening who is like me and really wants to get in touch with you more, I'm going to give, you know, we're going to talk at the end of the episode about, you know, where to find you and everything, but all the links are going to be at the show notes for this episode, of course, which will be at burlesquestrippeddown.com/Kaila.
Yeah.
And that's Kaila. Okay.
It's spelled like Kayla, but pronounced like Kaila. Yes.
So, before because we do, you know, we are running a little over an hour here. So I definitely want to make sure that we're respectful of everybody's time, and we're going to kind of start to wrap up, even though I know, like I said, we could talk forever. And honestly, like I was joking about it, but if it is something that you would be interested in, if you want to hear more from Kaila and us unpacking these things, maybe doing a Q&A session or something, send me an email, because I would love to set something up if the interest is out there. So velvet@burlesquestrippeddown.com. You can get me there, as always. And just let me know, because I would love to set more up, because this is blowing my mind. It's amazing.
I would be there in a heartbeat. So
that's so fantastic. All right. So before we move, okay, so I've got two last little sections, but before we do that, I have two just really quick questions, because I like to ask everybody. I know, you know, you've mentioned yoga, and I'm sure you take good care of yourself, or you at least have that as kind of a goal. What is one of your favorite self-care practices?
Oof. Something I'm working on. I'm not really good at self-care, to be honest. I tend to be a doer, so I overdo things, but honestly, burlesque is my self-care. I realized this the other night because I was supposed to be performing in a Bad Influence burlesque show, and I couldn't because of my wrists, and there was a whole... Anyway, I could have performed, but circumstances anyway. So I was sitting in the audience, and my boyfriend was like, "No, this is good. Like, you get to take a break." And I'm like, I turned to him and I was like, that was supposed to be my break. You know? Yeah. And for me, being on stage, like, I've been doing musical theater since I was 8 years old, and that is the time that I feel the most alive. And I love being in the dressing room with the incredible human beings that I get the opportunity to work with. That is my self-care.
I love it. That's absolutely wonderful. And, you know, I've talked, you know, with several other performers. I think Red Hot Annie was one of the first ones, you know, and she was saying, "Oh, I don't really know about that." I'm like, self-care can take a bunch of different forms, you know, and I mentioned, like, for example, the show Parks and Recreation. Like, for me, that's part of my self-care. Not necessarily any TV show, but that particular one does things to me internally, and I can feel how it helps me take care of myself. Yep. Which some people would argue that, oh, well, television, that's not, but what? It's my thing. This is self-care. This is not your care.
Exactly.
It's mine. So how about when you are backstage, what is one thing that you always carry with you in your burlesque backstage kit?
So I wish I had sewing stuff because so one of the newer burlesquers and one of my best friends, Rosie Rains, she just keeps a needle and thread with her, and she's so smart, and I wish I knew how to sew.
Probably smart,
which is why I just keep Rosie backstage with me. But I will always have glitter and eyelash glue. Always.
Like just loose glitter?
Absolutely, in multiple colors, just in case somebody shows up. Oh, and pasty tape. Holy cats.
Oh, I gotta buy some new pasty tape.
Right?
Thanks for the reminder.
And just pro tip for anybody who has access to an Orchard hardware supply store, their outdoor carpet tape is the best carpet tape in the world, and I always have that and a pair of very sharp scissors. So
there you go. All right. Sounds like a good little kit you got going on there.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this next little section is what I call pick your poison. And so we have gone into some hella deep stuff. And I have loved it. Don't get me wrong. It's been amazing. But we're going to take things a little bit lighter now. And I'd love to just kind of get to know you. I mean, I feel like I know you already, but a little bit more just as a human being.
Sure.
And so I've got 11 different questions. We're not going to go through all 11. What I would love for you to do is pick your poison and pick any number 1 through 11.
Let's go with 11.
All right. What is the last picture that you took with your phone? Or what was, I guess it would be.
A picture of... God, this is so silly. Okay, so I was having an argument with my boyfriend the other night about Josie and the Pussycats, and he doesn't believe me that it is the reason that I'm a socialist, because it was like this proto-feminist dissertation on the problems inherent in capitalism and in marketing.
Wow.
So,
all right.
Okay, this is so ridiculous. So I'm doing a number to one of the songs from the CD, and I couldn't find it online. And so I went on Amazon, and it was $5, and I just bought it, and I took a picture of it, and I posted it to Instagram like minutes before we started podcasting. And then my boyfriend messaged me and was like, "You just ruined the surprise," because he had bought me the soundtrack too.
Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah, so there's a picture of Josie and the Pussycats on Instagram right now. And I'm
very nice.
So excited because I get to listen to 3 small words tonight.
Yay! I'm not entirely sure what that is. I'm gonna be honest. I was not I'm aware of Josie and the Pussycats. I don't really.
Oh my lord! Okay, get thee to like a 2001. Like, just find a DVD.
Okay.
Just promise me that you will watch this at some point in your life. I'm a little scared to rewatch it because most of the movies that I loved as a child are actually like the least intersectional and like incredibly problematic. But I just remember this being like this proto-feminist dissertation on capitalism and marketing. So, yeah, so I'm
all right.
going to rewatch it.
It's going to be on my list. All right. That's perfect. Okay, now we have our this or that section. This is our very quick fire chance to get to know you. I will give you 2 options, and you choose whichever one you prefer. Okay. And you may interpret these in any way that you choose. Just throwing that out there. All right. You ready? Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts?
Starbucks.
City or country?
Ooh, can I pick suburbs?
Ooh, all right. I'll allow that. Thanks. People try to say both, and I say nope, but suburbs is a true thing. Okay, all right. Movies or TV shows?
Ooh, TV, because it's shorter.
Dita Von Teese or Dirty Martini?
Oh, am I going to get in trouble for picking?
No, because everybody knows we love them both.
Okay.
I mean, that goes without saying. But, you know,
okay,
there's got to be a little slight lean, right?
I go for comedy over glamour, so Dirty Martini.
How about a Dirty Martini or a pint of beer?
Ooh, I don't drink. Martini if I had to pick.
All right, just just the theory of it, just the shape of the glass. Yes. There you go.
Exactly.
Day or night?
Day.
How about, now, you mentioned something earlier that makes me think I know the answer to this, but Harry Potter or Star Wars?
Oh, Harry Potter.
Yeah, all right. We can't agree on everything.
I know. I hadn't even seen Star Wars, and then my boyfriend was like, "This is a deal breaker," so I watched all the movies, and then we went to go see the new one.
Oh, good. Okay, I approve of your boyfriend. Yes. You have my approval on this in that case. Now, how about top or bottom?
Ooh.
Remember, in any interpretation that you like.
I can't pick. Bottom? I don't know.
Okay, very good. That works. It's bunk beds,
Oh, yeah. Then definitely the bottom. I slept on the bottom bunk for like 3 years. So
there you go. All right. Mountains or ocean?
Ooh. I lived next to the ocean my whole life, but mountains. When I moved to California, life got better.
Classic or neo burlesque?
I like neo-burlesque.
Peanut butter or jelly?
Peanut butter, definitely.
Wow, no hesitation
None.
there. Okay. Comedy or tragedy? You mentioned.
Comedy's my jam.
How about Marvel or DC?
Ooh, I think I'm required to say DC because we have a Batman mezuzah, but I think Marvel.
Okay, it's a tough choice. Sleep or sex?
That's depends on that depends on the night, but I'm gonna choose sex.
Yes. All right. And lastly, heels or bare feet?
Heels. I went barefoot for like multiple years because of the nerve damage, and now that I can wear heels again, I'm in.
Lovely. I love it. Awesome. All right, cool. Well, now I feel like I know you a little better, even though we don't quite agree on the Harry Potter Star Wars thing, but I'll allow it.
I know
okay.
I'm a bad person, but...
But at least you enjoyed it, right? When you finally did see it?
Yeah, it was amazing. Okay, I'm like, why did I not see this until I was 29? What?
Right.
What?
I was a fangirl from, me and my best friend Erin, when we were little kids, we used to choreograph lightsaber fights. Like, it was hardcore.
That's
amazing. It was good stuff.
All
All right, so we're going to go ahead and wrap this up here. Where can we get in touch with you? How should we keep up with you, darling?
Yes. So my main website is performingwoman.com. That is the hub for all things me, because I'm a performing woman who is performing woman.
Hell yeah.
And if you want to find me on all of the social media, I'm at Performing Woman. I can't do Snapchat. I'm sorry, I tried. But Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Performing Woman. And then this new burlesque theater company thing, if you guys are in the Bay Area and want to come see our show, if you go to facebook.com/curtains cabaret, that's going to have the updates for all of the show. The tickets are going live tomorrow. So as we're recording this anyway, the tickets go live on the 24th of August in 2016. I don't know when you're listening to this. But hopefully we'll have many more shows in the future. And I do have a podcast. I don't know if we mentioned it on, I guess we kind of did. It's going on hiatus. However, I am going to keep it on, iTunes as long as I can and keep it up. So if you go to findingourhunger.com or type in Finding Our Hunger in your various and sundry podcast players of choice, you can hear 163, soon to be 164 episodes of people sharing their stories about recovery, about identity, about body image. I just recently, episode 163 was Magnolia Black, who's one of my favorite burlesque dancers here in the Bay Area. Totally worth. We talked about like inclusivity and identity.
Oh my gosh.
It was so great. So great.
I can't wait. I'm super excited. I've been, it's funny because you mentioned earlier kind of, the podcast you were listening and how you got so sick and tired of like the health ones and things. And I kind of got to that point. I had really like just overloaded on like entrepreneurial and business podcasts. Oh, yeah. Like I was like going crazy, like EO Fire every day, like all this, and plus a million other ones. I mean, there's nothing wrong with them, but I had just gotten so overloaded. And now I'm just loving these ones just about learning people's stories. Yeah. Just hearing what's out there and like what people are going through in their lives, it's amazing in general. Yeah. There's a lot of good ones. So I'm super excited to subscribe to yours and to follow all over it with the Curtains Cabaret. Maybe you'll make it a touring show and come visit me someday.
I would love that. I would love that.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience? I know we could have gone on forever and ever.
I would just highly recommend if you want to learn more about what I do. Like I said, I'm coming up with a program which I'll be releasing soon. And so if people are interested in that, just going to performingwoman.com, you'll get like a welcome mat that you can put your email address in. Or if you go to performingwoman.com/info, you can just sign up to get on the list. And you'll know more about it once I have more information for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and for having such great advice and for my little coaching session. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
And there you have it. I don't know if your mind was blown like my mind was blown, but my mind was blown. She is a fabulous human being. And as I told her after we finished recording and we were still chatting a little bit, I just feel so blessed to have gotten to know her. And I'm looking forward to getting to know her more in the future. So thank you again to Kaila for coming on. Thank you to our mutual friend, Jeremy, for putting us in touch with each other originally. And thank you to Dawn Sarah for putting us in touch with each other a second time. If you want to get in touch with Kaila, which you absolutely should, she has some wonderful things to share, go ahead and do that at Burlesque burlesquestripdown.com/Kaila, Kaila, and you'll be able to find all the links there. If you have any thoughts on some of the things that we talked about, I would love, love, love to hear from you. If you want to do so privately, you can email me, velvet@burlesquestripdown.com. If you'd like to join the conversation, there's always, of course, the comment section at the bottom of the posts. And on all of my websites, if you go over onto the right-hand side, you can leave me a voice message. And again, I'm a little mad at all of you because I haven't gotten very many of those, and I'm pretty upset because I would love to hear your voices. So definitely send me a quick message, up to 90 seconds. You can do so with your computer microphone or your phone microphone, just to kind of say hello and let me know what you thought. Of course, please do share this episode. There's a lot of value in here, not just for burlesque performers, but for women and men in general. So please share this with anybody that you think would take away something good from it. And of course, the social interwebs is Facebook, Burlesque Stripped Down, Instagram, Velvet Eau Claire, Twitter, Velvet Eau Claire. Please follow me, like my stuff, start the conversation so we can get in touch with each other. I will be back with you again later this week with my August favorites episode, where I'm going to share with you some of my favorite things that happened and that I discovered or rediscovered in the month of August. Thank you again so much for pressing play today. I hope you have a fabulous day, and don't forget to stay sexy.